I was still holding Grandma Rose's hand when Jake leaned in behind me and whispered, "Get your bag, we're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong." At first, I thought he was joking. His voice was soft, too calm. But then I looked up at his face, and I saw something I'd never seen before in the 7 years we'd been married. Fear. Real fear. Not the kind you fake when you hear a loud noise or jump at a horror movie. This was deep, alert, calculating fear. The kind that made your body go cold before your brain even caught up. I blinked at him, confused. "What?" I mouthed. He didn't respond. He just gave me the faintest shake of his head and a small, forced smile. Then he took a step back, his hand brushing against mine so lightly that no one else would notice. It was our signal, the kind we used when we were out somewhere and needed to get out of a conversation politely. I had no idea why he was using it now. All around us, people were laughing, eating cake, clapping along as Sierra gave her over-the-top speech about how none of this would be possible without Dad's planning. Balloons floated overhead, music played from a speaker near the patio, and Grandma, in her favorite blue shawl, smiled quietly in her chair like a queen watching her court. I should have been happy. I wanted to be happy. But Jake's whisper still rang in my ears. Act like nothing's wrong. I slowly stood up and gave Grandma a soft squeeze on the shoulder. "Bathroom," I whispered with a smile, and she nodded, still clapping at something Sierra said. Jake and I moved casually through the crowd. I forced myself to nod at people as we passed, smile, laugh when someone said, "You two heading to sneak some wine, huh?" Jake laughed back. "You know us." We entered the house through the sliding door. The moment it closed behind us, Jake grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just enough to make it clear we weren't stopping. "Jake, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "You're scaring me." "Just trust me," he said. "I'll explain everything in the car." I followed him to the front hallway where we'd left our things. He handed me my purse and my phone and scanned the room with quick, darting eyes. Then we stepped outside. The sun was still out. Kids ran across the lawn. Laughter echoed from the backyard. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal. Not anymore. Jake unlocked the car with a beep, opened my door, and waited until I was inside before walking around to the driver's side. He slid in, started the engine, and immediately locked all the doors. The click echoed like a gunshot in my ears. He didn't move. He just sat there, eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Then, slowly, he turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "Something's very, very wrong." My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" I asked, heart pounding. "It's just a birthday party. What's going on?" Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He didn't show me the screen. He just said, "I'll explain in a minute, but I need you to trust me right now, okay? Don't panic. Just sit tight." That's when I looked back at the house through the car window and noticed Sierra standing alone near the back door, staring at us. Her smile was gone. She wasn't waving goodbye. She was just watching. Like she knew we weren't supposed to leave. And that's when I knew Jake wasn't being dramatic. Something was really wrong. If you're just as confused as I was in that moment, don't worry. Everything's about to unravel. Stick with me and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what happens next. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. I was folding laundry on a quiet Sunday afternoon when my phone buzzed across the counter. I saw my dad's name on the screen and hesitated. We hadn't spoken much in the last few years. Not because of some big fight, but more because every conversation left me feeling smaller, like I didn't belong in his version of family. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. "Hi, Dad." "Maya," he said, his voice unusually cheerful. "How are you, sweetheart?" I was immediately on alert. My father rarely called me unless he wanted something. "I'm okay. What's going on?" He chuckled softly. "Well, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Your grandmother's birthday is coming up, her 85th, can you believe it?" Of course I could. Grandma Rose was sharper than most people half her age, but I stayed quiet, waiting for the catch. "We're planning a surprise party for her," he continued. "Big gathering, decorations, cake, all of it. Your sister's helping organize it, and we thought it would be really nice if you came too." That made me pause. Sierra and I hadn't been close since we were teenagers. She always seemed to treat life like a competition, and I was the opponent she wanted to beat. Still, I couldn't ignore Grandma's birthday. That woman had done more for me than both of my parents combined. "Of course," I said, surprising even myself. "I'd love to be there." "Wonderful," Dad said. "It'll mean the world to her." We hung up after he gave me the details: date, location, and the fact that it would be held at our old family home, the house I hadn't stepped foot in for nearly 10 years. That part made me pause, but I shook it off. When I told Jake later that evening, he looked thoughtful. "Your dad invited you?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," I said. "I know it's weird, but I can't miss Grandma Rose's 85th. She practically raised me." Jake nodded slowly, but didn't look convinced. "And Sierra's involved too?" "Yeah. Why?" He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I don't know, it just feels sudden, like they're trying too hard to make it sound perfect." I knew where he was coming from. My dad and sister were never the warm family dinner type. But still, Grandma Rose deserved to be celebrated. And maybe, just maybe, they were trying to patch things up. People change, right? Jake agreed to come with me, though I could tell he was doing it more to support me than out of excitement. He even booked a small hotel nearby in case we needed some space after the party. I appreciated that. The week leading up to the trip felt strange. I kept imagining walking back into that house, seeing my old bedroom, stepping onto the creaky porch where I used to sit with Grandma and drink lemonade, and every time I thought about it, I felt a weird mix of nostalgia and unease. The day we left, Jake double-checked everything: car tires, GPS, phone chargers. He's always careful, but he seemed extra focused this time. I brushed it off as him being overprotective. The drive took 6 hours. We played music, shared snacks, and tried to keep things light. Jake asked questions about my childhood, and I told him the good parts, like how Grandma used to sneak me cookies when my dad said no, or how we used to build blanket forts in the living room. We didn't talk much about Sierra, or my father. Some memories are better left in boxes. When we finally pulled into the driveway, it was like stepping into a memory frozen in time. The same white shutters, the same faded welcome mat, but everything felt staged. The lawn was perfectly trimmed, balloons tied to every post, and a banner that read, "Happy 85th Rose," hung above the garage. My father greeted us with a big smile and arms wide open. "There she is," he said. "My girl." Sierra appeared next to him, holding a clipboard and giving me an air kiss on the cheek. "We're so glad you made it, Maya, really." Jake stood beside me, his grip on my hand just a little too tight. He didn't say anything, but I felt it too. Something about all of this didn't feel right. The moment we stepped inside the house, I felt it. Not warmth, not comfort, not nostalgia, just something strange. Off. The living room looked exactly how I remembered it, only too perfect, like a replica from a catalog. The rug I used to lay on while coloring with Grandma had been replaced. The walls were freshly painted, and yet there was this chill in the air, like the house was holding its breath. Jake noticed it too. I could tell from the way his eyes scanned every corner, how his fingers tapped restlessly against his leg. He was in observation mode. That quiet part of him always kicked in when something didn't sit right. "Looks nice," I said softly, looking around. "It looks staged," Jake murmured under his breath. Sierra was already gliding around the house, greeting people with that high-pitched voice she always used when she wanted to seem friendlier than she was. Dad was giving a mini tour to some of the guests, pointing out framed photos and family heirlooms that I didn't even recognize. And then, in the far corner, near the window, I saw her. Grandma Rose. She was sitting in her favorite armchair, wrapped in her pale blue shawl, the one she always wore on chilly mornings. She was smiling at a little boy playing with a balloon near her feet. But something about her seemed off. I walked over slowly and knelt beside her. "Hi, Grandma," I said gently. She looked at me and smiled, but her eyes were tired, foggy almost. "Maya," she said softly. "You came." "Of course I did," I whispered, taking her hand. She gave me a light squeeze, but her grip was weaker than I remembered. I studied her face. She was thinner, paler. Her cheeks had lost their usual rosiness, and her eyelids drooped like she hadn't had real rest in days. Jake came over and placed a gentle hand on my back. "Hi, Grandma," he said kindly. Grandma blinked up at him. "Oh, Jack," she said. I looked at Jake. His smile didn't move, but I knew what he was thinking. Grandma never forgot his name. Sierra swooped in, breaking the moment. "She's been a bit sleepy lately," she said quickly. "Doctor says it's just age." I didn't like the way she said it. Dismissive. Rushed. I stood up and looked around the room again. Most of the guests were people I barely recognized. Distant cousins, family friends from long ago. But sprinkled among them were a few unfamiliar faces. Men in dress shirts and jackets, quietly standing around like they were just waiting. "Who are those guys?" I asked Jake quietly. "I was wondering the same thing," he replied. "They're not socializing. They haven't touched any food either." Before I could respond, my dad appeared beside us with 2 glasses of punch. "You two enjoying yourselves?" he asked with a too wide smile. Jake took the glass but didn't drink. "Everything looks very polished," he said. Dad chuckled. "Had to make it special. It's not every day your mother turns 85. He turned to me. "Glad you came, sweetheart. Your grandmother's been asking for you." I nodded slowly, but I was still staring at Grandma, who was now resting her head back, eyes fluttering closed. Sierra clapped her hands. "All right, everyone. Let's get ready for group photos outside. We want to catch that golden light." People started moving. Dad gave us a little wave and joined the crowd. Jake leaned in. "I'm going to step outside for a moment. Just want to check something near the driveway." "Check what?" He gave me a look that said, "I'll explain later." I nodded. "Be careful." He slipped away without drawing attention. I stayed with Grandma, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. She stirred, but didn't open her eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. The decorations were perfect. The house was spotless. Everyone was smiling. But none of it felt real. It felt like a setup. And for the first time that day, I wondered if coming back was a mistake. Jake was gone for maybe 10 minutes. When he came back inside, I could tell something had changed in him. His jaw was tighter, his eyes sharper. The kind of look he gets when he's piecing things together in his head, when something just doesn't add up. He walked straight over to me where I was helping Grandma sip water from a paper cup. "You okay?" I asked, watching him closely. "Yeah," he said, but his voice was clipped. "Can I talk to you for a sec? In the hallway?" I looked at Grandma, who was nodding off again in her chair, then back at Jake. "Sure." We stepped into the hallway just beyond the kitchen. It was quiet there, the music from the backyard muffled behind closed doors. Jake lowered his voice. "I saw wires coming out from under the porch. Not just power cables. These were small, tucked away, like someone tried to hide them." I frowned. "What kind of wires?" "Audio, maybe video. One of them ran straight into the wall near the living room window." "What would they be recording?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know yet. But that's not all. There are men stationed near the back fence, not guests. They're dressed like they're trying to blend in, but they're not doing anything, just standing, watching." I swallowed hard. "Security?" No uniforms, no badges, and I overheard one of them say something about timing the drop. That's not party talk. A chill ran down my spine. Jake, what do you think is going on? He didn't answer right away. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. I don't want to scare you, but I think something bigger is happening here. I also checked the medicine cabinet in the downstairs bathroom. It's empty, no prescriptions, not even Grandma's. I froze. She takes heart medication and sleep pills every day. Not anymore, she doesn't, Jake said. Unless they're hiding them somewhere else. I looked toward the living room where I could just barely see Grandma's shawl over the arm of her chair. She's not herself, I whispered. She called you Jack. She hasn't made eye contact with anyone. She's barely awake. Jake nodded grimly. It's like they're trying to keep her sedated, long enough to pull something off. Just then, we heard Sierra's voice floating in from the hallway. There you two are, she said brightly. We're about to do cake and gifts. Don't want to miss it. Jake smiled politely. We'll be right there. As soon as she turned the corner, he leaned back in toward me. I think your dad and sister are planning something with Grandma's estate, maybe even trying to prove she's mentally unfit. My head spun. But why now? He hesitated. Because all the legal power shifts when she turns 85. Maybe there's something in her trust. A clause? I don't know yet. I tried to catch my breath. Jake, we can't just accuse them of that. We don't have proof. I'm working on it, he said. I took photos of what I saw, but I need more time. I just need you to act normal until we leave. The words act normal hit me harder this time, because now I could feel it too. This wasn't just a party, it was a setup. We went back into the living room. Sierra was lighting candles on a huge cake. Dad was standing beside her, arm around her shoulder, smiling like he'd won something. Grandma's head was tilted back, eyes half open. I walked over and gently shook her arm. Grandma? She blinked slowly and turned to me. Oh, hello, dear, she mumbled. She's tired, Sierra said quickly, stepping in. We'll let her rest after cake. Jake whispered in my ear, we're leaving after this. I nodded without thinking. The room erupted into a shaky chorus of happy birthday. But I couldn't sing. All I could do was watch Grandma struggle to lift her head and wonder how I hadn't seen this coming sooner. The cake was barely cut when Jake touched my arm and gave me a quiet nod. It was time. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I knew the look on his face. It was the same one he'd had once when we had to leave a hotel in the middle of the night after he spotted a security risk. Calm, sharp, certain. I glanced at Grandma one last time. She was slouched a bit in her chair, her eyes unfocused as Sierra posed behind her for pictures like everything was perfectly fine. I whispered, I'll come back for her. Jake didn't respond. He just gently took my hand and led me through the side hallway that curved toward the front of the house. We didn't run. We didn't even walk quickly. Jake made sure of that. Every move was calm and collected. When we passed my dad, Jake smiled and said, Great cake. Dad clapped him on the back. Thanks for coming, son. That word, son, felt like acid in my ears. We made it to the front door without stopping. I could feel my pulse thumping in my neck. Outside, the sun was starting to dip lower, and the air had a thick, quiet stillness. Our car sat just where we left it, in the far corner of the driveway. As soon as the house was behind us, Jake picked up the pace. We reached the car and he unlocked it quickly. Get in, he said quietly. I slid into the passenger seat and shut the door. Jake got in right after me and locked all the doors with one sharp click. Then he started the engine and backed out of the driveway slowly, like we were just heading out for a quick drive. As we turned onto the main road, I finally exhaled. Then Jake said something that made my stomach flip. They had sedatives in the kitchen drawer. I turned toward him. What? I found a small pill bottle behind the silverware, unmarked, crushed residue on the cap. And it wasn't Grandma's. It had a different dosage. Stronger. My heart started racing. You think they've been drugging her? I think they've been keeping her just awake enough to appear present in case anyone asked questions, but too out of it to speak up. I covered my mouth with my hand. Oh my God. Jake kept driving, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. There's more. One of the guests? Not a guest. I checked his plate, clean, untouched, but he had a folder under his jacket. I saw paperwork sticking out, signatures, medical stuff, looked forged. My head was spinning. You think they're, what, trying to make Grandma look incompetent? Jake nodded. That's the guess. If she's declared mentally unfit, they can take full control of her estate, her house, her bank accounts, everything. And we were just sitting there, eating cake, I whispered. Not anymore, Jake said. We're out. He took a sharp right turn, off the main road. Why are we turning? I asked. I saw one of those men, one of the quiet ones, step outside and start talking into a phone as we walked out. I don't want them following us. I looked behind us. Nothing but trees and an open field. Then I checked my phone. I have no signal. Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. I took photos of everything I could, the wires, the papers, the pill bottle. If we take this to the police, they'll have enough to investigate. I stared at him. You did all that in under an hour? He shrugged, focused on the road. You know how I work. I smiled, despite everything. But it was a fragile smile. The kind you wear when the pieces haven't fallen apart. Yet. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Why did you leave? I froze. Jake glanced at it. Then he locked his jaw and said, We're going straight to the station. I didn't argue. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about protecting Grandma. It was about stopping something before it got worse. The road stretched out in front of us, silent and endless. Jake drove like a man with a mission, focused, steady, eyes checking the mirrors every few seconds. I kept staring at the message on my phone. Why did you leave? No name, no context, just those 5 words. I didn't reply, I told Jake. Good, he said firmly. Whoever it was, they wanted to rattle you, make you second-guess leaving. Well, it worked, I muttered, hugging my arms around my chest. Jake, what if we were wrong? What if we just overreacted? Jake didn't take his eyes off the road. Then let the police tell us that. I fell silent. I wanted to believe this was all some terrible misunderstanding. That maybe the pills were innocent. That maybe the men standing around were just awkward family friends. That maybe my sister hadn't spent months planning something dark behind Grandma's back. But then Jake pulled the flash drive from his pocket and handed it to me. Open the files, he said. See for yourself. I plugged it into my phone using a small adapter he always kept in the glove box. The drive was full of photos, grainy, fast shots, but clear enough. The first few were of the wires Jake mentioned. Tiny cables snaking under the porch, taped to the underside of the walls, hidden behind decorative paneling. The next showed the medicine bottle, tucked behind the cutlery. Crushed residue on the inside of the cap. No label. But it was the last few that made my stomach turn. Papers, forms. A close-up shot of a document with a forged signature. My grandmother's name scrawled in sloppy handwriting that didn't even match hers. Jake pointed. That one is a declaration of incapacity. It's a legal form used to start a conservatorship. I looked at him horrified. You're saying they were going to take legal control of her? All her assets? Looks that way. I closed my eyes. They wouldn't have done this today, though, right? Not during the party? Jake was quiet. What? I asked. He hesitated. Then, there was a man near the basement door, dressed in medical scrubs. I thought he was just helping out until I saw him with a duffel bag. Could have been equipment. Or Worse. No, I said, shaking my head. Grandma's not sick enough for home care. She's never mentioned a nurse. I think that was the point, Jake said. They were counting on no one noticing. Just sedate her, get the signatures, move her to some facility while she's too disoriented to fight it. I covered my mouth. We were the only ones who saw it, weren't we? He nodded. That's why I got you out. I stared at the photos again. The timestamp on them was just an hour ago. My hands started to tremble. Jake reached for my phone, opened the contact list, and tapped a number I hadn't called in years. Who are you dialing? I asked. He held the phone to his ear. County Police. My heart skipped. Are you sure? Completely. The line rang 3 times before a woman picked up. County Sheriff's Department. What's your emergency? Jake spoke clearly, calmly. I need to report suspected elder abuse and fraud. We have evidence. It's urgent. He gave our names, Grandma's name, the address of the house, and a brief summary of what we found. The woman on the other end asked him to pull over if possible and wait for officers to meet us. Jake agreed. We pulled into a small gas station off the highway and parked near a side fence where the car couldn't be easily seen from the road. As we waited, I stared at the steering wheel, my mind spinning. She always trusted them, I whispered. She thought Dad and Sierra had changed. Jake took my hand. They haven't. But you saw it. That's what matters. 20 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up beside us. Jake handed over the flash drive and calmly explained everything. I chimed in, shaky but steady. The officers didn't dismiss us. They listened, took notes, made calls. Then one of them said, "We're heading to the property now. You 2 should come with us if you're up for it." I looked at Jake. He gave me a nod. And just like that, we were heading back to the house I'd just escaped. Only this time, we weren't going alone. By the time we pulled back into the driveway with the police escort behind us, the sun was sinking fast. The house that once looked like a cheerful party scene now felt eerily quiet. The music was off. The guests were gone. Only a few cars remained. My stomach twisted into a knot. Jake parked near the curb and squeezed my hand. Ready? I wasn't. Not really, but I nodded anyway. The officers approached the front door, one knocking firmly, while the other positioned himself near the porch steps. Jake and I stood just behind them, my heart pounding like it might leap out of my chest. After a few seconds, the door opened. Sierra stood there, still in her party dress, her makeup slightly smudged. She smiled brightly, too brightly. "Officers, is something wrong?" "We're here following a report of suspected elder abuse and fraud," the taller officer said. "Is your mother home?" Sierra blinked, but her smile didn't budge. I think you have the wrong house." Jake stepped forward. "No, they don't." Her eyes flicked to me, then to him. "You called the police?" Before I could respond, the second officer spoke. "Ma'am, we're going to need to come inside. Now." Sierra hesitated, then stepped aside, her hands trembling slightly. "Of course, please." The living room looked just as we'd left it, only now it was darker, shadows stretching across the floor. And in the center of it all, still in her armchair, was Grandma Rose. She was asleep, or unconscious. The older officer stepped forward and gently tapped her arm. "Ma'am?" Her eyes fluttered open slowly. She blinked up at him, dazed. "Yes?" "Do you know where you are?" he asked softly. She looked around. "At home." "Do you know what day it is?" She paused. "My birthday?" Jake leaned into me. "She's still under something." The other officer radioed for paramedics, then turned to Sierra. "Where is her medication?" "In her bathroom," Sierra said quickly. "Why?" "Can you show me?" Sierra hesitated again. "It's just in the drawer. You're welcome to check." The officer nodded and disappeared down the hallway. At that moment, my father walked into the room. "What's all this?" he said loudly. "Officers, I don't know what my daughter told you, but this is a misunderstanding." Jake stepped forward. "Then you won't mind explaining the hidden surveillance equipment, the sedatives, and the forged documents I found in the house." Dad's face went pale. "Excuse me?" Jake pulled out his phone and held up one of the photos. "This is your signature on a legal declaration stating Grandma Rose is mentally unfit, filed without her knowledge." The lead officer looked at it, then turned to my father. "Sir, we'll need you to come with us." "You too, ma'am." Sierra's voice cracked. "We were just trying to protect her. She's getting worse. We were going to move her into care. She needs it." "No, I don't," Grandma said suddenly, her voice a bit stronger. Everyone turned to her. She sat up, slowly but firmly, blinking against the light. "I'm not confused. I'm not crazy. And I didn't ask to be locked in this chair all day while you planned to take my house." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Grandma," she looked right at me. "You came back for me." Jake knelt beside her. "We're going to make sure you're safe. You have my word." Paramedics arrived moments later. They began checking her vitals while the officers escorted Sierra and my father outside. Neither of them said a word. I stood in the doorway, watching them go. No yelling, no excuses, just silence. Jake wrapped his arm around me. "They'll face charges, the documents, the meds, everything. There's more than enough." I nodded, still watching the police cars as they pulled away. Later that night, Grandma was taken to the hospital for observation. I rode with her in the ambulance. She held my hand the entire way and didn't let go until the nurse settled her into bed. "I thought I was alone," she whispered. "You never were," I said. "Not for a second." Back at the hotel, Jake and I sat quietly on the bed. No TV, no music, just silence. "You did good," he said finally. "So did you," I replied. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not just relief, but peace.